Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm David Chambers. I am your host, and I'm a men's dating relationship intimacy coach. And this is the short episodes where I go into a smaller topic that that's come up in my coaching, my work. And this week, as I said, I'm going to talk about why people aren't creating deep connections on dates. This is something that a couple of men have come to me recently, and I was talking about with one of my longer term clients recently. And I'm going to just touch on some of the issues when it comes to like conversation and presence, because these are the two things that really are like at the heart of the problem of not creating deep and meaningful connections. And then I'm going to talk about the issues, and I'm going to talk about some kind of solutions and ways to not just alleviate, to get rid of those, right? And have deeper conversations that are more connecting, that are more fun, more playful. So, conversation issues, right? Some of these are things like not knowing what to say. You might be experiencing these. Not knowing what to say, fear of making mistakes, not saying what you really want to say, fear of upsetting the woman you're on a date with, a fear of coming across as boring, not listening, which is obviously a presence issue, maybe being too logical. That's a big point for a lot of men, being really, really logical. Only talking about what you do, like the things you do, like I went here, then I did this, then I did that, then I did this. Not being very brave with the conversation, keeping it safe, making sure you don't say anything that upsets anyone or says anything she's not going to like. Very basic answers to questions. Like someone says, hey, how are you? Or how's your day been? Just going, oh yeah, my day's been good. My day's been fine. That's a very good example of answering a question that could be a really beautiful way to give someone a picture of how you're feeling, what your day was like, and you answer it really short. And asking lots of questions but not really listen to the answer. And then some of the presence issues are, not being present, being distracted by other things, like things that are going on around you, distracted by your phone, for instance, overthinking, distracted by nervousness, anxiety, worries, fears, not really listening. Those are the issues, right? So let me talk about the solutions for conversations. One of the solutions is something I call golden nuggets. I talk about this in my Creating the Spark workshop, which goes into a lot more detail about this, some of the stuff I'm talking about here. And if you're interested in it, then you can send me an email and you can purchase that off me. Or if you ask very nicely, I'll give it to you for nothing. Golden nuggets. Now, golden nuggets, I call this, is like when we're telling stories, when I'm answering a question, for instance, I'm peppering along the way all these interesting pieces of information that you can go back to and elaborate on. So say, for instance, I might say, tomorrow I'm flying back to the UK. If you said, what you have to do this weekend, I might say, I'm flying back to the UK. I'm going to fly back to London, stay with a friend of mine. And then, I've got some work to do at some schools, and then I'm off to the States. Now you might hear that and go, okay, cool, nice. Oh, whereabouts in London? The golden nuggets are, right, is that I'm going back to London. Like, obviously I don't live in London. You might know that I live in Portugal. But, okay, I'm staying at a friend's. Where's my friend's place? How do I know this friend? Who is he to me? Who is this friend to me? Schools. What am I doing at schools? What sort of work is that? Like, what's that about? Who am I going to be speaking to? How do I feel about that school's work? I'm going to the States. What are you going to do in the States? Have you been to the States before? Whereabouts in the States are you going? And some feeling stuff around that, like, how am I feeling about going there and so forth. And like, when the story is expanded, there becomes more golden nuggets. This needs listening. You need to listen to people to elaborate on this, right, as well. Another thing you can do is like, when someone says they're going to the States, you might reply and go, nice. And they say why they're going there, blah, blah, blah. You might go, oh yeah, I've always dreamed of going to the States. Or I've been recently, and this was my experiences. Like, I've got a friend who's there, and blah, blah, blah. You create more of a scene and understanding, right? And connection through your shared experiences as well. Asking questions. Another thing is asking questions to draw out emotion. So you're asking questions that, like, how do they feel about certain things? Like, maybe they're starting a new job. Like, oh, how do you feel about starting a new job? Oh, you're feeling a bit worried. Yeah, I totally understand that. And you can go further, like, why are they worried? are they nervous? Or you can empathize. There might be some like, oh yeah, like I started a new job a few months ago or a couple of years ago and I was really worried about going in, but then when I got there, it was all really good and blah, 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 right? Again, speaking yourself with emotion is another point. A lot of men really lack on this side. They talk very monotone, very, very dry and very boring, and no one really listens, right? Because they're stuck in their heads. So they're just saying words, but they're not really feeling the story that they're expressing. So that's expressing your own emotion as well. And through that is connecting to the emotion of your story. I do a lovely practice with my clients around this and helping them to connect to the core emotions of their stories. And it really transforms their dates, actually, that single practice, because once they start doing that, the way they express themselves completely changes. So, expressing that emotion. Tonality, you'll hear me a lot in my podcast. When I'm talking, I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm like emphasizing points, I'm pausing, bring all this in, right, as well. Don't just be agreeable. It's something I see a lot on dates with guys. They just don't want to disagree or question someone's opinion. If someone has an opinion about, a place, for instance, and they're like, yeah, I hate that place. And you're like, oh, why is it? I really like it there. Like, what don't you like about it? I really didn't see it like that when I was there. Something like that. Like, you don't have to be agreeable. You can kind of challenge someone's ideas and like get to understand why they think the way they think and what's occurred in that place for them to think the way they think. That's also an important part, because you don't have to just be agreeable with everything someone says. Equally, you don't want to just be continually like contentious and wanting to disagree and be argumentative. That's very different. But just being agreeable is also different to that. And also touching on another one I think is really important is like not being willing to voice your opinions, thoughts and ideas that are different to your dates. Again, I see a lot of nice guys especially, wanting to be like, oh, if I have the same ideas as they're going to like me. No, actually, we quite like people who have differing ideas to us, right? Differing ways of thinking, because it helps us expand our thinking and learn new things. It can make you more attractive. Compliments, it's basic, right? But very generic compliments, like you have really beautiful eyes, is not doing anything for anyone, because it's not personal. You haven't thought about it. It's not about them and who they are, right? If you're going to compliment someone, you want to be more precise about it, more specific about what the thing is that you really like, why it is. Use words that actually like describe it in some way. I gave an example of one of my clients. He said to a girl he was dating before we worked together that, he thought she had nice eyes. And I said to him, what if you were like, you looked at her and said, your eyes are this beautiful, stunning, deep sea blue. And I feel when I look into your eyes, I could almost get lost in the just sheer expanse of how I can just fall in and stare into your eyes all day, right? That's a whole different level of compliment I've just given you there. And it's not as for you to go and use that, but it's like, give it something, like, make her feel something by hearing it that makes her want to actually feel like, wow, this guy can articulate himself and he can express himself. Being comfortable with your sexual energy is another thing as well. Men, traditionally, there's men aren't very comfortable with sex. I'm not necessarily saying talk about sex. That's something that is sometimes appropriate and sometimes isn't, depending on you, the girl, and your comfortability with your own sexual energy. It's like, but I see a lot of men going into dates and they start to feel maybe attracted to the dates and they get very uncomfortable with that. So being comfortable with your own sexual energy and being a sexual being and knowing there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of practices I do, again, with clients to help them with this, around this, because it's a very, very important point, because ultimately dating and relationships contain sex. And if you're not comfortable with sex, dating is going to be difficult for you. Simple as that. So it's a very, very important piece to work on. So that's all the conversation stuff, right? And I'm really just going really high level with all this. I could do a podcast episode on each of these small things. Presence. Now, this is the absolute golden thing that really women want from men, especially, a high value or conscious or mature woman wants from a man, right? Simple as. Every single woman I speak to and has done for the last 4 or 5 years through this work I do, through programs and workshops I go to. Women want presence from men. And men lose presence for a number of reasons. Overthinking is a big one. Getting lost in the wrong type of presence as well, right? Which is our thinking most of the time. You're thinking about stuff. You're thinking about like, oh, what do I say next? Don't say that thing. Do say this thing. Oh my God, does she like me? And all this. And that sort of thing that's going on in your mind takes you away from being present to the moment, to this spatial area of being with yourself and herself. It's a slightly different presence, right? And obviously you can be present to many things, but being present of taking her in as the person you're on a date with, and yourself as a physical being, and being in that kind of relational presence, right? And that requires us to get out of our heads, get into our bodies a bit more, some embodiment, learn to breathe a bit deeper. Pay attention to how you're breathing as well. Again, if you contact me, I can help you with some breathwork techniques to keep you centered and grounded and relaxed. Connecting to the moment, listening to her and what she's saying, that really helps with the golden nuggets. But it helps you stay present when you pay attention to her words instead of paying attention to your overthinking and fears and worries in your mind, right? It's a really important point. And the last thing I'll say is another important point is dropping the meaning. We have a habit of giving meaning to things that happen. Like you walk in, you see a date, she shakes your hand instead of hugging you. You're like, oh shit, that means she doesn't like me. She doesn't find me attractive. Oh no. And that meaning creates a story in your mind. The story of she doesn't like me, she's not interested, I'm not good enough, whatever that story is for you. And that story, when you engage in it and you continually run it around your mind and you think of it, searching for more evidence of it being true, creates a whole deal of emotions that take you out of the moment. They take you out of being present, and they take you out of the possibility of having the fun and the engaging conversation that you could have, right? And obviously there's a few other things around having deeply connected dates. There's a certain level of physicality and playfulness, and I've done episodes about those things, particularly playfulness. I did an episode recently with a guy called Lawrence about being playful, about being fun, innuendo, those sorts of things, right? Being relaxed is included in that. So this is just a little short one. If you're a guy and you are, regularly getting dates, but they're not moving into something deeper, right? If that's something that you want, let me know, because I can help you. I'm a coach. I work with men one-on-one. I also have a group program coming up in September, which is going into kind of a pre-launch. So I've got a waiting list for that. It's not a dedicated dating program by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. It's really the foundations of a lot of what I talk about in general, of being like a grounded masculine man. It's actually called being an authentic masculine man, or for AKA, it's going to be called BAM, right? Because this is what you need. This is what's missing to create attraction. It's missing for you to have good dates. It's what's missing that keeps your dates engaged and turns them into relationships, right? And I cover many modules from presence and awareness to communication, helping you with your emotions, expressing and connecting and being with those as well as some stuff around goals and dating, a relationship, leadership, and life leadership as well, because these things are all vital to be a holistic, authentic man. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the show notes. All you do is pop your details in there, and that's it. You don't have to, just to be on the wait list for the program. And if you do that, when the program does start going into being sold, you'll get 20% off, plus a whole load of other free goodies, including some coaching sessions, a free coaching session with me. But that's all for now. Until next time, ciao, ciao.